Good evening. Welcome to CyFy Day 2. This session is on building back better, pandemics, resilience, and the digital economy. The past 2 years has seen an unprecedented increase in the use of digital economy, particularly digital tools, digital applications by government, businesses, and the public. The government has used digital health technologies, businesses have used e-commerce technologies, and the public education, information, connectivity, and banked on digital payments as they sat at home. What are the emergent trends in digital transformations, particularly for developing nations? And how can countries leverage their booming innovation ecosystems as they ride this new wave? Can we build back better using digital technologies? To help us examine this, we have a high-level panel with us today. Winston Ma, Managing Partner of CloudTree Ventures, Maggie Sprenger, Co-Founder of Green Cow Venture Capital, Utkarsh, Founder of Network Capital, Sheetal Kumar, Exec from Global Partners Digital, and Amit Marwah, Head of Marketing and Corporate Affairs, Nokia. I welcome you all to this panel discussion. We will first take opening remarks from everybody, and then I will get into a moderated discussion with the panelists. So first, I'd like to welcome Winston to kick off the discussion, and then over to Maggie and so on. So Winston, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks very much. And if you look at the China example, the pandemic crisis has been a catalyst for digital transformation accelerating. Just like another more famous Winston, right? Winston Churchill said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." This should be a perfect opportunity for all emerging markets to catch up with the digital transformation. When you look at China, first, at the government level, it launched the new infrastructure initiative as part of this COVID-related stimulus package. Now, in the past crisis, 2008, China was focusing on high-speed train, railroads, power plants, etc. Right, the traditional infrastructure. But this time, more than $4 trillion was announced for new infrastructure investments. That's about 5G connectivities, blockchain networks, and the nationwide data center system. Right? And at the corporation level, you also see this acceleration to move to the cloud. Because of the flexibility of the cloud arrangement, and also because of the uncertainty in the business environment, small corporations are hesitant to make big IT investing, right? So in this context, actually the pandemic actually accelerated companies' migration into the cloud in China. And the third aspect is about the small businesses. Because there's no foot traffic by the consumers to the corporations directly, right? So the corporations, especially for the small businesses, they really have to use the digital tools to reach their customers. And interestingly, even the farmers in China joined in this direction. They have fruit to sell, and in the middle of the pandemic, the demand for healthy food goes up. But how can they connect, right? So it's actually, even the farmers are now using short videos, to do live broadcasting to connect with the potential users, which proved to be a lifeline for that business. On one hand, right, the farmers can really demonstrate their information in a cost-effective way. And on the other hand, the consumers actually appreciate the opportunity to have interactive purchase process. This is just one of those examples of small businesses, leveraged new technologies during this crisis. So when you look at China, right, at the government level, at the corporation level, at the small business level, it has all been a process of accelerating digital transformation. Back to you, Pocket.
Thank you very much. Let me ask Maggie to come in here with her opening remarks.
Great, thank you so much. As mentioned, I'm a venture capitalist, and my focus is very much on the next wave of innovation. I'm specifically looking at early stage companies in the deep tech space, which are leveraging tools like AI, machine learning, robotics, and computational biology to address challenges in what we consider foundational markets. These are the spaces that were under-innovated, but are now seeing incredible founders tackling opportunities, and they're being propelled by a few forces. First, there's a behavioral catalyst from the pandemic, and that's forced the adoption of a lot of future of categories, like future of healthcare, future of education, future of work, and so on. Next, we're seeing costs fall in everything from advanced materials to computational capability, and we're seeing the ability of the technologies like robotics and ML finally delivering on the promise that tech has had for decades. And finally, in the financial markets, we're seeing a velocity of capital that is driving huge amounts of innovation and opening new startups. Now, how do these forces apply in emerging economies? I think of it as being very Dickensian. It is the best of times and it's the worst of times. The good is that there's so much opportunity right now to address pressing global and borderless issues. Things like climate change, inequality, poverty, they all have the potential to have some remedy from technology. Ways in which we can do this broadly, Winston already touched on one, leveraging blockchain to increase transparency, using tech to address Maslow's hierarchy of needs, starting with basics like clean air and water, food, managing services, all the way up to self-actualization. Healthcare can be more accessible through digital access. Approximately 80% of the global population has a smartphone, which means the computer in our pockets can open up educational opportunities, economic employment, and more. I like to remind my daughter more than she would like about how blessed we are by geography and time, that we live in an era and in a place where we have the chance to pursue an education, economic opportunity, and have access to healthcare, interesting ideas, art. Now, anyone with a smartphone has the potential to do the same, but there are, of course, any number of pitfalls. First, it's great that 80% of the world has a smartphone, but that's still a huge number of people who don't have it. And I'll leave alone the question for now of whether everyone wants or needs one. If we're arguing that access to more information and services via digital is a good thing, which I do believe to be true, then we must address inequality in infrastructure. The infrastructure investment is mandatory for digital connectivity and particularly important for SMEs in emerging economies. Next, there are political and cultural questions of access to information and services. The digital rights policies can drive growth and accelerate opportunity. Access to risk-tolerant capital to grow businesses and fund developments will also be critical to create localized wealth and solutions. Greater digital adoption could help emerging economies generate as much as $3.4 trillion in economic value by 2030. But this is all going to depend on the incentives, policies, educational support to create a talent pool, infrastructure, and more. Emerging economies can leapfrog. They don't have to overcome the inertia of outdated legacy systems, from credit cards to landlines. The potential is tremendous. I think that this space, the access to information and services, the lowering of any number of barriers is incredible and has very positive potential. But one big challenge is going to be in managing already significant divide in wealth, which is going to accelerate exponentially and have the potential to exacerbate the very issues that we're trying to address.
Thank you, Maggie. At this point, let me ask Utkarsh to come in here. Utkarsh, what do you think of some of the questions posed by the panel? Your opening remarks.
Thank you, Akshay. First of all, I loved what both Winston and Maggie said, especially invoking Dickens. I think that's the way to sparkle me. I love Dickens, and I really think that it's a time to think about some of his writing. My expertise or my curiosity, Akshay, is in the world of work. So when I think of the last 1.5 years, my own example is a lens of what the millennials and Gen Zs are speaking or thinking about. In the past 1 year, I left my job, I moved countries, I raised funding from Facebook, wrote a book, and now I'm, talking to you with my handheld device, on a chilly winter morning in London. So our relationship with work has changed as a generation. I've become really interested in how people are redefining their new work life. And I study this space called passion economy very carefully, about this emerging space where people are able to connect their passion and make that their profession using the modern tools and technologies. So in the past 1 year, about 500 million people lost their jobs. And then there are people like me who quit their job and created something new. So if you add all of these, basically around 1 billion people are creating something new with the world of work. They have to reinvent themselves. In the US, The Atlantic wrote about the great resignation, about how people are resigning to create the new normal of work. And I think to build a new or a resilient economy, we really need to build more resilient communities. I don't think there is a workforce strategy that is applicable for everyone. That's why, the company that I run, Network Capital, is an example of one very large global community that helps people build meaningful careers by enabling real human to human connections aided by technology. So, in this new era of community driven work, in the era of passion economy, I see three mega trends emerging. One is that you'll see emergence of companies of one. There are many people who run powerful media companies, and essentially they are run by one person, one man, one woman. Small groups of people coming together to do something they truly care about. I've studied that there are newsletter writers, just people who sit down and write newsletters and make upwards of $1 million, $2 million a year doing something that they love. Second, I think that governments will have to play a much more interesting role in thinking of things like universal basic income. I stumbled upon a term called universal creator income, where when people do creative jobs or engage in the passion economy, what is the role that government should play? In France, for example, the government reduced the number of mandatory hours required to be able to help out the artists who lost jobs in the pandemic. And similarly, countries like Germany, the UK, and so forth have come forward. Interestingly, no emerging market or no emerging market country did anything for their artists, or very few did. And I think that really needs to change. When these small business owners, micro entrepreneurs, passion economy builders, they need support and they need tangible support. So I would love to see more emerging markets play a role in that. And the third mega shift is that lifelong employment and retirement as concepts are gone. I know people who are 60, 70 and are starting and doing difficult businesses on Network Capital. 80% of our 120,000 users on our platform, networkcapital.tv, are millennials. But the rest 20 are people over 65, 70. And when I speak to them, they have as much energy, as much creativity as, say, an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old. So we're entering an age-agnostic society. But the people who will run out of energy would be those who, sometimes would want to find meaning in the world of work in the 21st century, but they are still hung up in one way in the 18th or the 19th century. And I think that is a recipe for disaster. I don't think that this resilient economy can be built by governments alone or communities alone or non-profits alone. It truly needs stakeholder collaboration. But I'm a big believer in micro. Just the way I gave you my personal example, not to tell you what a giant success story I am or how much sacrifice I have done in the last year. Just to tell you, I am an example or representation of millions of others who are in the process of negotiating this world of work, a world of work that I'm super passionate about. And I'm very happy to be building in the passion economy and writing a bit about it. And yeah, live to see another day. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Utkarsh. I can tell you that after listening to this, the number of people thinking about newsletter writing is certainly going to go up. So, but I have a few questions for you that I'm going to come back to you for sure. At this point, Amit, can I bring you in for some of your opening remarks? And then I'll ask Sheetal to end that opening session.
Thank you, Akshay. And I'm glad to be part of this panel with such a diverse, views and panelists from across the world. I mean, the way and how we are having this discussion itself shows how digitalization is leapfrogging to the next level. But talking about India specifically as a developing country and an emerging economy, I would say I'll give you three examples. And one of them is as recent as what happened today. But there was a unique identification system in India called Aadhaar card, In India, we didn't have ID cards for citizens. And this was rolled out about 5-7 years back. It was an example of how 1 billion people got an identification system for the first time at a cost of probably less than 10 cents. And all this happened because of how digital acceleration is happening. The second example I would like to quote, which is, as Winston said, the opportunity from the pandemic, UPI is it's a transaction platform. It's a banking transaction platform that the government started. And in the last 1.5 years, the kind of acceleration we have seen in this platform, we have seen about, in fact, I was seeing July's report, there were 3.24 billion transactions on this UPI platform with the 6 trillion of Indian rupees which was transacted. So unprecedented. And proudly, I can say that today is a historic day in India, where India has reached 1 billion vaccines that have been given. And that has happened also because of this huge digitalization and emergence of a platform which was created in India called CoWIN, which helped register and we achieved this platform in a record time. Having said that, I think I belong to Nokia, and the common thread between Maggie, Winston, and Utkarsh was technology is going to play the accelerating role in the future, and I'm proud that we are part of that journey, especially the journey towards 5G. We have a study in Nokia which was done by Bell Labs, which is part of Nokia, which says that today, you have the physical industries and you have the digital industries. So the digital industries are, the fintechs, the e-commerce, the banking, the insurance, and the physical industries have very little ICT spend or digitalization happening. So the ratio today is that, 70% of the digital industry is already, the ICT spend is being consumed 70% by the digital and 30% by the physical industries. This in the next few years is going to reverse. So 65% spend will be done by the physical, which means what I'm trying to say here is the physical industries, mining, ports, manufacturing, all these physical industries will see a huge leapfrog as technology towards 5G emerges, and we are able to provide more and more in order to. So in Nokia, we say that this is not going to be just for creating a new economic value. It is going to be creating new employment opportunities. It is going to improve lives. It is going to create a safer world, and it is going to be a more sustainable and connected society in the future. So this is what digitalization is going to be doing in the future. And I think we are at the cusp of a huge opportunity, especially with this transition the world is going to see from existing technologies to 5G, which actually is going to leapfrog the entire way we live in the future very, very fast in the next coming years. So proud to be part of this journey from my perspective.
Thank you very much, Amit. And let me bring in Sheetal. Sheetal, what do you think? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Akshay, and thank you to CyFy for inviting me to this really interesting discussion. So when it comes to the digital transformation, there are 3 things I really want to emphasize. And I've got 3 minutes, so I'm going to try to do these 3 things. And the first is people, because people have to be at the center of this. And the second is trust. The internet requires trust. So any policies, any measures which undermine trust in the internet, either at the technical layer or elsewhere, are bad for digital transformation and for building back better. And we need a whole of society approach. So we're not going to make any progress unless we think about the broader societal structures, inequalities, and issues that we're facing. And we heard a few of those earlier, climate change, etc. So we really need to have a holistic approach. Now, The trends, well, we've seen obviously a huge increase in reliance on the internet, right? So people have moved online to do their education, their business, access healthcare, everything. And we've seen the internet actually survive that. It's quite resilient. And the reason it's resilient is because of the principles that underpin it. It is open, it is decentralized, and it is ultimately important to preserve that as we move forward. Unfortunately, we are seeing risks to that. And so if we want to ensure digital transformation, we have to maintain an open, free, and secure internet. And I think what we've seen in the last year or so is, unfortunately, there are a number of gaps, not only in terms of number of people online, which is of concern, but also even in regulatory frameworks. So with all of this adapting to the new digital environment and people using the internet a lot more in their daily lives, we're seeing the amassing of much more data. Some of that, or quite a lot of it, is personal data as well, and it's sensitive data. So we need to ask ourselves, do we have the right regulatory frameworks in place to ensure that that data can be handled securely, that it is protected? These are all questions which, in some contexts, in some jurisdictions, unfortunately, the answer is still no. So we need to make sure that that changes, because, as I said, we need to ensure trust. And just as an example of where in some cases we're seeing an undermining of trust, we're continuing to see proposals to undermine encryption, which is an absolutely key part of maintaining trust in the internet. We all require strong encryption in order to maintain our transactions with the internet in a way that is trustworthy. And yet we're still seeing attempts to undermine it. And it's Global Encryption Day today, so I would be amiss amongst my colleagues if I didn't mention that to you. So I do encourage you to type Global Encryption Day into a search engine of your choice and figure out all of the things that are happening today to bring attention to that. So in order to build back better then, in terms of digital transformation, the transformation has to be people-centered. We have to have the right regulatory frameworks in place to ensure that, and it has to preserve an open, free, and secure internet that maintains the commitment to those principles that has created the internet that we all enjoy using and depend on. And we also have to, like I said, be aware that it's not going to be a silver bullet. So just creating more access is not going to solve all our problems. We have to do this with awareness of the broader issues that we're dealing with, and making sure that when we bring people online, that we're bringing them online to the right kind of internet that will enable and empower them to take advantage of opportunities. So that's how we'll build back better, I think, by ensuring that we're addressing those three key points: people, trust, and a whole of society approach. Thanks.
Thank you. The best part about this panel is that you're all optimistic. You all pretty much seem to agree with each other. So that makes my job a little harder. So what I'm going to ask you to do is try and see if you can respond to what someone else has said. So I'm going to start with Maggie first. Maggie, you mentioned behavior. I mean, the three trends that are driving your investment decisions, or at least digital transformations around the world, which is behavior, cost, and capital. And Utkarsh is, I don't know if it's a fourth dimension, but he's talking about this idea of micro entrepreneurship, this idea of a new relationship with work. There's another phenomena that is brewing there. So, are you ready for this transformation? Are you ready to invest in this kind of a transformation where you're saying a one person company, when you see a micro entrepreneur, and particularly when you visualize that, think about a micro entrepreneur in a developing country?
So investing in a micro entrepreneur for the work that I specifically do is outside of my thesis. We're specifically looking at massive global industries like supply chain, like accounting software, like warehouse management. What I think is being discussed in the creator economy, where it could intersect my work, is looking at platforms and the ways in which we are empowering these individual creators, passion economy participants, to be able to further expand their audience, their access, their participation in the workforce. Now, in the event that someone is very, very gifted and can write a book and create a structure around himself, that's incredible. But a lot of these creator economy participants may have full-time jobs while they are building this on the side. And so actually Winston and I were just on the phone the other day talking about a startup that we're looking at that would be leveraging a virtual world with music, so that it would be empowering bedroom DJs to have a place to perform and participate. It would be empowering the Unreal engineers who are building within a specific world to show their art and their creations. And I think that's a really interesting intersection, and I think that that's a space that we're seeing grow very aggressively. And so I am long on the creator space, even if I participate largely in, the overlooked unsexy sectors.
I can't be the judge of that, but I think you've answered my question, because I think platform economy and some of the things you're looking at are clearly aggregator platforms where multiple micro entrepreneurs or individuals are connecting together for a certain service. So I appreciate that answer very much. Let me switch it up, and by the way, if you do happen to put money into Utkarsh's company, remember to give CyFy a royalty, okay? That happened here in 2021. CyFy 20. Okay, Amit, let me ask you a question, because Sheetal brought up the issues about people trust and whole of society approach. And the three examples you gave, I think it's well known to this panel, but also well known around the world about the identity system, etc. But there is a challenge in there, isn't it? I mean, to be able to get these large platforms across, but then also to be able to secure and provide and still be able to address all the risks that come with it. It's been a challenge here in India too. So how do we reconcile this idea of providing these platforms for the public, but at the same time addressing Sheetal's concerns that there's issues of security, there are issues of trust, and there's people at the center of it all. Can that happen? Has that been happening effectively? Amit, that was for you. Oh, should I repeat?
Sorry, I could not follow the full question because I think the audio was breaking for me.
Okay, do you want me to repeat?
Can you hear me? Yeah, please.
What I was saying was, Sheetal mentioned issues about risks and security, and kindly reminded us today is World Encryption Day. But she was talking about people that we have to think about people and trust and a whole of society approach to digital transformation. And you mentioned digital platforms like Aadhaar and COVID, etc. But there's always been this battle, as we all know, between getting these large public aggregator platforms out versus some of the security concerns and privacy concerns, and just putting people at the center of what we're trying to do. How do we reconcile these two as we get into the 5G space, which means even more connectivity, and possibly we're getting into technologies that are not visible to the average common person? How do we manage these risks?
Yeah, I got it. So I completely agree, and so there is no simple answer. Firstly, I cannot give you an answer to this because it's a very, very complicated issue that we are facing in hand. And especially as we move in the journey to technology, just to give you a perspective, I don't want to become too technical, but 5G is about three big pillars of what is going to happen. It's massive broadband, so we will get speeds of 1 Gbps and more on mobile phones. We will have massive machine-to-machine communication. So today, if you have 4 or 5 devices that you use, in the future, there will be 20 or 30 devices that will be touching. So it's massive number of things which will get connected. And the third is that latencies will go down in the whole, in the networks and the future. So which means that new opportunities and use cases can emerge. Now, while all this happens, the problem becomes, you're absolutely right, exponentially more critical. Trust, security, vulnerabilities will increase multi-fold. And there is no simple answer to it. I can give you an example of what India is doing. India today is running a very robust new system, probably being done for the first time in the world, of establishing that networks of the future, how they can be trusted, how and what needs to be done in order to create trusted. So it's something which governments and the industry and the society will have to work together on in trying to establish that what are the norms that are required, what are the privacy issues, what are the things that need to be tested, and how it is going to be tested to in order to establish that which is something a technology that you want to deploy in the future and how you want to deploy it. So like I said, there's no simple answer to it, but I think there's lots happening across the world right now in order to establish certain common framework on how we want to move in the future.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. While my question was rather simplistic, the answer is obviously not. Let me ask you, Winston. You made a very poignant remark that China, the last global transatlantic financial crisis of 2008, 2009, China, all the liquidity that China pumped in was all about reviving physical infrastructure. And now they're moving, and there was hesitation against IT infrastructure, but now there is movement towards digital infrastructure. At the same time, Amit was talking about actually more capital going from digital towards physical as we start getting into the 5G space. Now, I know it's not the same thing because you were talking about large physical infrastructure like ports and dams, etc. But I think what I'm hearing from you and Amit is maybe the countries are in different levels of development, or maybe there could be different trends across the world where China is investing in digital, but maybe for India, it is important to introduce technology to the physical world instead. What do you make?
Totally. You know, this is a very related question in terms of the China's next development. You know, next stage digital development, because you see, China had last round of traditional infrastructure development, right? And now, with that as a foundation, China can now push for this new infrastructure initiative, focusing on the cloud computing data centers across the country and the 5G networks across the country, etc. Right? But you know, when you look at the prospect, actually it's very challenging. You know, like China for the first time, you know, 2021 exceeded 70% internet connectivity. Right? That's quite impressive, but. This you know, 2021 we're still 70% only. That means for a country with 1.4 billion people, more than 400 million people still do not have internet connectivity, right? And you know, my fund, you know, CloudTree Ventures is based in the US, you know, investing in interactive entertainment, right? So I would say without the internet connectivity, you know, obviously we're going to talk about wealth gap, etc. But the first thing is the person, most likely a farmer in the rural area, missed a lot. Not only about like not being able to use short video to sell his goods. First of all, he didn't even get a chance to watch some goofy videos, you know, when he has nobody to talk to, you know. So we have a very challenging situation. You know, I think some of the speakers already talked about this, right? About, you know, still connectivity is the issue, you know, for almost half of the world population. You know, so when you look at the China situation, the increase of penetration rate is actually decreasing, and a part of that is because the lack of traditional infrastructure in the remote areas, right? So in order to reach those people in remote areas with internet, actually you actually need to have the railroads and the train to get to those areas. You know, so I would say, to back to your question, you know, these two are highly connected, and actually, like, you know, for emerging countries, they can leapfrog, right? Just do both at the same time.
And I take your point that there is, I suppose they're not at odds with each other, but there has to be an alignment between the digital and the physical world, particularly when you're talking about emerging markets and developing countries. And I think that point is very well taken. Sheetal, perhaps maybe when we talk about digital rights and risks and putting people I think it seems that even the demands and the behavior of people is changing. So the way we used to uh, ask for certain kinds of rights, I think there is a distinction there. I mean, people want to see the goofy videos. You want to be the micro entrepreneurs. You want to have the unique identity system. It's coming from the public too, not just being forced down from the government. So how do we mold the public perspective, or how do we shape public perspective so that we're asking for something which is pragmatic out of the digital companies or from government as we go forward?
Well, I think, and the reason why I say it has to be people-centered is that we have to think about, digital transformation for whom or for what. It shouldn't be for those, for markets or just to grow the internet for that sake. It has to be ultimately in pursuit of a more sustainable, a more just world, I would imagine. And if that transformation then results in greater inequalities, and it's not a good transformation, is it? So, but that really requires very proactive policies and thinking. And what I think we're seeing is that there's a gap in knowledge of, people don't necessarily understand for example, is being done with their data, or how they can manage it, or what their rights are. And there needs to be a lot more transparency around that. And that's definitely somewhere where we're lacking. And then in some cases, we're seeing the deployment of technologies, like I said, without the right frameworks in place. So biometric or facial recognition technologies, and a lot of information being gathered that is personal, that frankly might be quite terrifying to people, but they might not know what they can do about that. And so what we want to do is live in a society where people feel empowered by their use of technology. They want to use it, they want to invest in it, they want to spend time on it, and that's, I think, where there are some gaps, and we still need to continue to work with that vision. And so really one of the key things, especially working in policy where I do, is ensuring that when we are developing those frameworks to deploy those technologies, that we do it in an inclusive way. So we've heard that before. We need to maintain that commitment to engage in all sectors of society and involving civil society, industry, and government in these discussions.
I think we might have lost Sheetal. Sheetal, are you there? Okay. Yes, I think we've lost Sheetal. So let me come back to Sheetal. So Utkarsh, we're drawing to a close, but I wanted to ask you. You've heard Sheetal. She's talked a little bit about people putting people first, which is very much like what you said. But you also have the investors on the other hand, and you have the big corporations also trying to solve. Everybody's trying to solve this issue. Utkarsh, can you? When you are looking at micro entrepreneurs and you're looking at the passion economy, surely you're thinking about how the individual can be empowered to plug into a greater society, if not the government, right? So what are some of the things that we can empower the individuals with, or the micro entrepreneurs with?
Yeah. No, thank you, Akshay. It's an excellent question. It's a question that I think often about. My vision for the world of work isn't necessarily a utopian one. My example isn't, I'm not an exception, I'm part of a norm. And I think one has to look at platforms, people, and the history of internet to look at the world of work today. So I wrote about it in my latest Observer Research Foundation article, but broadly there is Web 1.0, the first wave of the internet, which was about information, sharing of information. Web 2.0 was about peer-to-peer networks, where platforms became really popular. And the platforms were funded extensively, but they also collected all the data. And then the creators or people started wondering, hey, all the data goes to platforms. What about this inequitable relationship? The third wave, Akshay, where we are entering, is the Web 3.0 phase, where companies like Network Capital, mine, are operating, which are about co-ownership. So the truth of the matter is that people help build the platform as well. They share their data, they provide feedback. I'll tell you, we recently raised funding from Facebook. That wouldn't have happened if we didn't have our entire global community supporting us. And it is only fair that our global community also owns a part of their equity. So this new world of work that we are entering is going to be about co-ownership. And the point that I talked about earlier, the micro entrepreneurship doesn't mean that the earnings are micro, by the way. I just finished writing my second book, which is called The Passion Economy and the Side Hustle Revolution. The top newsletter writer in the world makes $10 million a year. Charlie D'Amelio, a TikTok star, runs a country. She has 120 million followers on TikTok. I don't know if these are micro institutions or there are macro institutions, but I do realize that exceptions don't prove the norm. But I really am a big believer in 1,000 true fans, where people who are just embarking upon the new world of work, they don't necessarily need to create the next Facebook or find 10 billion people. I hope that happens. But even if you build something valuable that empowers 1,000 people, which Kevin Colley calls 1,000 true fans, you can build a multi-million dollar business on top of it. Look, Akshay, I think you know I've been writing for ORF for a while. I flipped my life last year. Microsoft used to be my day job. Network Capital was a passion project. I flipped that. And I can tell you, and doing that, having spoken to hundreds and thousands of people one-on-one, I've realized that it's not just me. This is a broader trend. When people work, they look for three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. The great, like a lot of people having this redefined relationship with work was because the Web 2.0, Web 1.0 models just don't work anymore. So the Web 3.0 here is about co-ownership, co-creation, and I think a renewed relationship with governments and platforms so that we can together define the world of work that we enter in. Thank you.
Thank you, Utkarsh. I take your point very well that you were one that you made that micro entrepreneurship does not mean micro earnings, and I think in the way I posed the question, that's what it came across. So I stand corrected. But also on your point regarding co-ownership as the future. So points very well taken. Sheetal, we lost you there for towards the end of what you were saying. So do you want to come back and finish? I think we had you till you said that the world will still need those rights, and that proactive policy making is required.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think we've got that in any way figured out, and we often hear how the technology runs away and then policy has to catch up. But I think we need to be committed to doing good policy, and what that means is inclusive policy making, and that's really key, because all of these different layers, as we live in a more digitized world, connect to each other. So protocols and standards that are shaping the internet are going to impact policy. Policy will impact, the infrastructure and the way that the internet operates and digital technology, and how that impacts our day-to-day life, what we can access and what we can use, and the kind of internet that we have. So really, it's incredibly important that we engage more people in these discussions, and that we have really meaningfully inclusive discussions. So I suppose that would be my main point that I was trying to make at the end there. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. With this, I'm not going to make an attempt to summarize this discussion, but it became quite clear that I think the five of you should definitely meet outside this panel for a cup of coffee, because you have so much going and so much alignment in what you are saying, between what Maggie said on the trends that are changing the digital transformation and behavior cost, capital, and platform economy, between what Winston said about the changes and the alignment with the physical and the digital economy. Amit spoke. Thank you, Amit, for speaking on behalf of India a little bit on our platform economy and the lead we are taking. And of course, Sheetal, continuing to fight for a proactive policy making in the areas that we need. Otherwise, the technology will get way too ahead of us. And Utkarsh for reminding us that there are other jobs out there that other than our own. But more importantly, that passion economy and the relationship with work is changing. So I hope you guys will get together for a coffee, and remember to pay CyFy a royalty if something does come out of it. With that, I'd like to thank you for joining us at CyFy 2021. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.